Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're very glad you could join us today. My name is Laura Jones, and I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator of the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be your host and question moderator today for the webinar, I See a Library, Making Libraries More Accessible to the Visually Impaired, presented by Kate Kosior. Kate Kozier is the State Manager of the South Dakota Braille and Talking Book Library, having previously served as a public librarian for 3 years. In her former career, she was also a rehabilitation teacher of the blind for 10 years. Having grown up in small towns and tiny libraries, Kate has a passion for rural service and is excited to serve in a new capacity in one of the most rural states in the US, meeting the challenges of rural living and disabilities head on. Kate and her husband Greg live in Pierre, South Dakota with their daughter Leah and 4 cats. In her spare time, she enjoys practicing skills learned from the Great British Baking Show. We are thrilled to have Kate here presenting for us today. I have just a couple of announcements. To register for our other webinars or trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. This session will be about an hour, so you will receive 1 LEU for the presentation. If you're watching an archived recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube. And now I will turn the presentation over to Kate.
Great. Good morning, everybody, and hello from beautiful South Dakota. I'm going to get my screen share going here. I have a presentation on PowerPoint. It's not the most fabulous thing, but it's going to do the job, hopefully. So just give me 1 second. And we'll start this. Okay, can everybody see that? Just the title slide here for now. So as Laura said, my name is Kate Kosier, and I am the director of the South Dakota Braille and Talking Book Library. I have a master's degree in rehabilitation of the blind, which I earned in 2000 from the University of Arkansas. And then I got my, MLIS from the University of Arizona in 2016. So I did 10 years in the blindness community and then transitioned into libraries. So I just want to make clear that I am not a medical doctor and I'm not willing to talk about any sort of medical stuff. But I'm just here to kind of talk about making your library accessible. So we're going to start with a little true-false quiz here and just go through these real fast. I'm going to give you about 1 minute to do this and test your knowledge about blindness. So see if you think these are true or false. First one is being visually impaired means you can't see anything. Second one, only old people have vision loss. Third, it is important to speak loudly to people with vision loss so they get the message. People with visual impairment can't read print material or access information. It's inevitable that we will lose our eyesight when we get older and nothing can be done about it. People with vision loss have better hearing than the rest of us. And it is difficult and expensive to make things more accessible. Okay. So why does it matter if we allow, but if we make our libraries more accessible to people who have visual impairments? First of all, we want everybody, regardless of who they are, to have access to information. And by doing simple, quick tips that I'm going to give you today, you can increase their access to information, which is already sometimes limited by their disability. Secondly, it allows for a reduction in social isolation. So a lot of people with disabilities are stuck home alone a lot. People tend to kind of go about their business and forget that that person can't get out as easily by themselves. And so creating a welcoming space in your library where they can go and feel at home is very important to their mental health. providing a sense of belonging. It's not enough to just let someone walk in the door, but they have to feel they can use your facility and belong there, that you actually want them there. Visual impairment is common and increasing as our population ages. The National Eye Institute estimates that roughly 2.4 million Americans age 40 plus are visually impaired. The public library where I used to work actually was majority of our patrons were well over 40 years old. So we served plenty of people who had different eye conditions. And finally, it's the law. So you can visit ada.gov to learn what you can and should do and what you have to do legally to have people in your library. So I have just realized that I forgot to turn on the sound for my presentation, but we're going to watch two videos. First one's about 4 minutes long, and the second one is about 6 minutes long. And they're going to teach us about visual impairment, but I'm going to have to stop the screen share for a minute and start over just so that I can get the audio on. So I apologize. Okay, so I'm going to actually skip the first.
Hello, and what?
I'm going to skip the first 47 seconds of this.
Let's start it. Okay, so before we can really help our patrons with vision impairment, it's important that we understand what vision loss is and what it does. So, how do we define blindness? A person is considered legally blind if their central acuity is 20/200 or worse in the better eye with correction, or if they have a 20-degree or smaller field of view in the better eye. That sounds like a lot, so let's break it down. What does that mean exactly? On a standard eye chart, you have different lines of text that you read. Up at the very top is a giant letter E, and it goes all the way down to some very small letters. Each line has a notation. So 20/200 is the big letter E, and 20/20 is further down on the chart. To have 20/20 eyesight is considered perfect. That means when an object is placed 20 feet away from you, if you have perfect eyesight, you can see it how you're supposed to. If you have 20/200 eyesight, that means an object is placed 200 feet away from you, and a person with normal vision could see it, but you can only be 20 feet away from it before you're able to see it clearly. If that is the best line that you can read on the eye chart after correction, meaning using glasses, corrective lenses, or having surgery, and that is the best line you can read with your best eye, or you can't even see that line, you would be considered legally blind. Please note that if your left eye tests 20/200, but your right eye, for instance, tests 20/80, you are not considered legally blind because your better seeing eye sees better than 20/200. The other way someone can be considered legally blind is if they only have a 20-degree field of view or less. Some eye conditions steal our peripheral vision, meaning the eyesight we have on the edges of our field of view. You can test your peripheral vision by putting your hands up at the side of your face and staring straight ahead. Wiggle your fingers. When you see them moving, you are using your peripheral vision. If that vision starts to narrow and you develop tunnel vision down to a 20-degree field of view in your better eye, you are also considered legally blind. You could have perfectly normal acuity, meaning you can see 20/20 out of that little tunnel that you have left. But because your visual field is so restricted, you're considered legally blind. From being legally blind, you can also go all the way to total blindness, which is called no light perception. You can have light perception, meaning you can tell the difference between light and dark, but you can't make objects out or really any variation therein. Total blindness is fairly rare, accounting for only about 1/12 of the total visually impaired population in the United States, or roughly 1 million people, according to the CDC. Okay, so we have now learned what vision impairment is and legal blindness. If you have any questions, I'm putting up a website here that points to the industries for the blind and visually impaired, and you can read up more on this topic. Otherwise, I'll be creating another video on common vision conditions and what they do. See you.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to that one.
Hello.
And after this video, I'm gonna take any questions you might have just about vision loss in general. And I'm gonna skip the first 30-ish seconds of this video as well. Again, I'm not a doctor. I just want to make that clear. I can't talk about your specific eye condition. If you have any concerns, please see your eye doctor.
Conditions and what they do. Because I am not a doctor, none of this can be construed as medical advice or information. If you have concerns about your eyesight, please schedule an appointment with an ophthalmologist. So, with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so before we can really help our patrons with vision
This is the one. Sorry, guys.
trouble with,
Here we go.
by taking a look at a cross-section of the human eye. To the left of your screen, you will see the front of the eye, and towards the right hand side of your screen is the back of your eye with the optic nerve leading back to your brain. We're going to discuss a number of eye conditions, and it will be important to know some of these parts. So we'll take them in turn. So let's start with cataracts. Cataracts impact the lens in the front of the eye when protein deposits form and cause a film that is difficult to see through. Cataract surgery is quite common these days, and the affected lens is simply removed and an artificial lens is implanted. The new lens, however, is not perfect. It cannot change shape to focus on objects that are close up, so many cataract patients still require reading glasses after their surgery. Here you'll see two pictures, and it will give you an idea of what it is to have cataracts. The picture on the left is a small garden scene as seen through quote-unquote normal eyesight. But on the right, you can see what it looks like to have fairly advanced cataracts. Note that the image is very blurry and cloudy, and it's difficult to make out the details. Let's talk about age-related macular degeneration, or ARMD. Surrounding the inside of your eye is the layer of cells called the retina. Inside the retina is a small little dimple at the back called the macula. The macula is responsible for all of your crisp, clear central vision that we rely on the most. With ARMD, what happens is that the cells inside the macula start to break down and you see a blockage in your central vision. Let's look at a simulation of what ARMD can look like. Again, on the left, you'll see a picture of what someone with quote-unquote normal vision would see in looking at the little garden scene. On the right-hand side, you'll see what it might look like for someone with ARMD. Pay particular notice to the garden gnome who has suddenly been overtaken by a black spot. And that's what ARMD does, is it slowly works its way out, occluding your central vision. The good news is ARMD will never take all of your eyesight, as it does not impact your peripheral vision. The bad news is that ARMD has no known cure. Okay, let's talk about glaucoma. And of all the conditions we're going to talk about, this one is the most complicated, so try to bear with me. Again, we have our eyeball here, and in the very front of the eye is a small chamber called the anterior chamber. That chamber is full of a fluid called aqueous humor, and that flows in and out of the chamber to cleanse and nourish the front of your eye. When you have glaucoma, the drainage network there fails, and it begins to build pressure in the back fluid chamber of your eye called the vitreous. And as that vitreous has pressure expanding and expanding, it puts pressure on the optic nerve, which is what's transmitting the signal from your eye back to your brain. When that happens, you start to lose your peripheral vision. Glaucoma is often called the sneak thief of sight for this very reason, because it starts out in your peripheral vision where you can't see as well. You don't notice that you're having a problem. And that's why regular eye testing with an ophthalmologist is so important. There are multiple types of glaucoma. I don't want to get into all of that in this video, but I've posted a link here to the Mayo Clinic where you can go and find out all about it. All right, let's have a look at a glaucoma simulation. We're used to the picture on the left by now, and on the right you're going to see what it would look like through the eyes of a glaucoma patient who has a pretty significant vision loss. As you can see, they've got a tunnel, and it has really narrowed down what they're able to see, but their central vision is still quite good. Okay, the final eye condition we're going to talk about today is diabetic retinopathy. This is a complication of diabetes. With this disease, in the back of your eye, again the retina, is full of little blood vessels. They start to break open and leak blood into the vitreous. This causes little islands to float around in your field of view. Let's have a look at what that might look like. Again, a normal view of the garden on the left, and someone's view with diabetic retinopathy on the right. See all the little pockets where they can't quite see and how it does obscure some important information, like the welcome sign. And with that, we'll draw this video to a close. Know that these are not the only eye conditions your visually impaired patrons may have been diagnosed with, but they are the 4 most common in the United States. As you prepare to welcome visually impaired patrons into your library, I hope that the tools I've compiled for you will be very helpful indeed.
Okay, so are there any questions real quick about either of these 2 videos?
We have had a couple people wanting to know if they can get the PowerPoint from you so they can get those links that are on the videos and the videos.
Yes, definitely.
Perfect.
Yep, I have my contact information at the end. I know it goes by kind of fast. And I'm also going to share, I have this entire presentation on the Rural Library's website, and I'll share that link too, so you can have that.
Perfect.
Yep, okay. So let's move on. So knowing this new information, what exactly can I do to help people who come into my library who might be having trouble with their eyesight? We're going to start by looking at contrast. So having good contrast is important. The reason I did most of this slideshow on a black background with white letters is to show the importance of contrast. And you can do similar things when creating materials that you're going to hand out to patrons or just things that you post. And it creates a really accessible environment to provide independent functioning. So we're going to do a little contrast test here, and you'll be able to see just how important it is. So again, black background with white print. And you'll notice that the font is very clean and simple. There's not a lot of cursive writing and serifs and stuff everywhere. So this is a good example of good contrast. Similarly, this is also an example of good contrast. But if you compare the black on white versus the white on black, you might notice that you prefer one over the other. The white might seem a little too bright, or the black might seem a little bit too dark. Yellow is also a top choice for providing contrast for people who have vision loss. And it's been proven also to help people with dyslexia to be able to read more easily. So a lot of times we might provide yellow overlays, and I'm going to show you where you can order those to help improve contrast and just make it easier to read for people. It's really good at reducing glare and just helping print to stand out more clearly. And then we have this slide. So I just wanted to share this color combination. First of all, it's really quite difficult to read if I didn't put it in pretty large print font. The cursive writing makes it also a lot more difficult to read. And the question here is, why else might this slide be problematic? The most common type of color blindness is red-green color blindness. A lot of men and boys who are colorblind are red-green colorblind. And so for them, this would be just a washed out gray sheet of paper. They wouldn't be able to probably see much of it at all. And so you want to think about those things, even though something looks pretty, or, you know, it looks really nice for the holidays or something like that. Who are you excluding by using a particular font, a particular color combination? So let's look at some pictures of contrast in action. This is a pretty common sign. This is from my old library back in New York State where I used to work. And what's good about this particular sign, it's standard ADA signage. It has the white figures on a dark background. The word restroom shows up really well. It's hard to see, but the Braille is down on the bottom. So really, there's nothing to complain about with this sign. The only thing that they could have done better is that, as opposed to mounting the sign on the door, which is a little bit dark, they could put it on the white wall next to it, and that would help it stand out even better. This is the front door of the library that I used to work at in New York. And as you can see, it was kind of a riot of information. We have a calendar, a bulletin board display. We have the book sale going on. We have the information rack for tourism. And then somewhere in all of this mess is a tiny little library sign. Let's see if you found it. Right there. The sign itself isn't bad. It's white letters on a brown background, and the print is pretty good. It's all caps. It's not very fussy. It does match with all the other signage in the building. This particular library was in the community center, so the town clerk had that sign, the post office, the historian, and the courts. We all had the same signage. But because the environment is so messy here, it's difficult to see. So how might a patron know this is a library anyway? Well, I had the library purchase and install this floor mat. The color is great. You have the white universal library sign on the bright dark blue background. And even if you can't find the library sign, you almost certainly can see that, and it contrasts well with the light colored floor. So looking at this picture, do you see any other issues that might be indicated here that would make it difficult for a person with a vision loss to navigate this environment? You see where the arrow points here, there were some big windows and a couple of doors there, and there was a lot of glare in this hallway. So for somebody who has a condition where glare is an issue, and we're going to talk about that, having this amount of light really reflecting off the surface could be difficult. Okay, here's another area where you know, cosmetically, it looks great to let the light switches blend in, like the picture on the right-hand side. But for a person with a vision loss, they really need to be able to find your light switches efficiently and quickly instead of fumbling around for them. And so by simply installing a black switch plate over top of the white switch or against a white wall, or conversely, if you have dark colored walls, to put a white switch plate in. Switch plates cost between 50 cents and $1. You can create really good contrast for people, and they'll be able to independently operate the lights. Maybe that's not important in the main part of your library, but if you have meeting rooms or study rooms, things that people are borrowing, spaces they're using privately, you want them to be able to go in there and use that space. Here's another example of contrast in action. with the signs. So the one on the left, we already talked about. On the right, I just took this one at the South Dakota State Library this week. And the red sign next to the elevator sign is the example of poor contrast. They've crammed a lot of information onto a very small sign. The print is really narrow and difficult to read. And again, although it's an emergency sign and typically you would want that to be read, for someone who has a red-green color blindness, it would be difficult for them to read that sign. So where or how else can you improve contrast? In publications and newsletters that you're putting out for your library, you always want to check the defaults. I made newsletters for my old library, and when I started printing one out just to see how it was going to look, I noticed that it was really quite difficult to read. And when I checked the default setting of the color of the text, it was set to gray, not black. And that's why it was printing so faintly. So you want to make sure that that is easy to read. On your return slips, a lot of times you give people a little printout that tells them what their next due date is. Instead of just handing that over to them and hoping they can see it, you could use a highlighter and highlight the return date. You could use a Sharpie and write the return date in larger print. I used to do that for my patrons that would use the large print books. On workspaces, so I'm going to do a little demonstration about this in a bit. I'm going to show you how you can improve contrast, but I'm going to do that with the computer section. So just hold on to your hats for that one. Again, light switches, charging stations. If you have a white table with a white charging station, that charging station is going to disappear. So maybe you could put a black power strip on the desk, and then people would be have an easier time finding it. Computers, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit too. And then eliminate visual clutter. So you want to think of it as making a classic PowerPoint, not a boring PowerPoint. I know that visually speaking, I don't have a lot of graphics going on here, but ultimately for someone who's showing up and does have some vision loss, it's easier for them to read this type of PowerPoint than something that's got a lot of images and pictures all over the place. Okay, so now we're going to talk about magnification. And there are a variety of types of magnification. It's important to know that only a low vision provider or an optometrist can actually prescribe magnifiers. I've had a couple librarians contact me about what magnifiers they should install in their libraries. And magnifiers are very subjective. So I know plenty of places you might have those little glasses like you get at the drugstore that are maybe like a 2x magnifier. Something like that is fine. But if you are thinking about, I know that Joe Smith really needs a pretty hefty dose of magnification. That's for Joe to discuss with his optometrist. That's really not for you. And also, interestingly, the physics of magnification are that the more intensely powerful a magnifier is, the smaller the field of view is. So a 10x magnifier is about the size of a $50 because the way it works. So it's not always the most efficient way. So here are some of the types of magnification. First of all, just making things in large print. If you probably have large print books, but if you are doing posters, if you're doing a newsletter, having the option that you could print out maybe 3 or 4 large print editions and provide those to people is a great choice. Video magnifiers or CCTVs, that's what you see over here on the right-hand side. So this one was donated to our library by the Lions Club. And as you can see down on the bottom, there's a tray, and we put the magazine underneath there, and up on the top, it's magnified. I think this is about 8 to 10x, I'm not fully sure. But these video magnifiers can go up to 25x. So you're really only seeing maybe a couple of letters at a time. But for somebody who has macular degeneration and they're trying to see around that blockage in their central vision, this can be really useful. What's nice about it too, as you can see, is that not only is the print there, but you can magnify pictures. So if someone has an old family photo album, they could do that. Because of the workspace, you could put your checkbook under there and write out a check and be able to see it. I don't necessarily advise it because these things are expensive, but I've had people, patrons and clients of mine who've done their nails under there. I mean, they're really all purpose. The downside of these things is that they cost several $1,000s, but there are plenty of ways to get your hands on them. Like I said, the Lions Club donated this one to my old library. This is an older model. The ones now have a ton of bells and whistles on them that this doesn't even begin to capture. But this one now would go for about $800. And I was just talking last week with our services for the blind here in South Dakota, and they actually have dozens of these that they're getting ready to retire them. And if the patrons don't want them, they're willing to give them to local public libraries. So I'm going to start working with them on that. Every single state in the country has a service for the blind, a department for the blind, and you know, it doesn't hurt to check in with them and see if they might have something like this for your library. Handheld magnifiers, I think that's kind of what we think about, you know, the little thing Sherlock Holmes holds on to, and those certainly have their place, but again, you wouldn't want to give those out. People would generally come in with those. And glasses or wearable magnifiers. You can control the size that you have materials printed in. So this is an easy way of adjusting magnification without using an external device. You can see the font sizes here that I have put from Microsoft. And if you see the 14 point has a little star, that's the minimum print size that the United States Postal Service will allow us to ship things free to our patrons. So that's generally the low point for visually impaired people. Maybe you can't print your entire newsletter in 72-point font, but you can almost certainly enlarge the titles. You can make PowerPoint fonts bigger. You can make posters, the fonts on your posters bigger. You can make programs bigger, and you can mess with, you know, maybe having a quote in large print, something like that. So it's worth playing with. Okay, why can't magnifiers fix everything? Well, first of all, visual field loss, like we saw with glaucoma, actually requires smaller print, not larger print, because you are trying to fit things into a very small space. Secondly, magnification doesn't take into account glare, which is a lighting issue, and also design issues, things like images. This image is actually a pretty poor one, although visually it looks kind of cool. The contrast isn't that great with the white on the kind of grayish blue. And so it might be that looking at that with a magnifier, you still can't see it very well. Okay. So now we're going to talk about lighting and glare. Good lighting helps enhance contrast and it improves your visual function, but bad lighting creates glare issues and can make it much more difficult to see and be able to function independently. So let's talk about the different types of lighting. First of all is natural lighting. It's free sunlight. You can stick a chair by a window and take advantage of great natural light. But of course, it's subject to the weather, so sometimes that may not always be available. And in the evenings, you're going to have to accommodate for darkness as opposed to having access to sunlight. You can do that also by providing simulated natural lighting. There's a company called OTT that creates OTT lamps, and I'm going to try to click on this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I wanted to show you these lamps. Okay, can you guys see this website? Okay, I'm not hearing that anybody can't see it. So OTT provides these full spectrum lighting options. They do floor lamps, they do table lamps. And so by providing this sort of lighting, maybe on one desk, you know, they are a little more expensive. Frankly, you can get them cheaper on Amazon if you don't want to purchase directly from the distributor. You can get them, even Walmart has full spectrum table lamps that are between $20 and $30. So don't feel you have to go to OTT, but they are kind of the original creator of this type of light.
Okay, we didn't actually see the website. It looks like it's just still showing your screen share. So
Okay.
if you want, I can put a link in the chat. Is it
Yeah.
ottlight.com?
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, I'll grab it.
So. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. It switched over on my screen, but you never can tell with Zoom. Okay, so are we back on my slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then there are various bulb types. So there's incandescent, fluorescent, halogen, and LEDs. Fluorescent is one that probably most places have. Certainly South Dakota State Library has them. My former library had them. It does create a nice kind of diffuse light. You have these giant bars of light and it sort of filters down and it's not super bright and super concentrated. I put a little star there because of these three types of light. It's the only one that's not dimmable. So if you have patrons that have glare issues, and particularly people with cataracts have a lot of issues with glare, then it's not so easy to, the other types of lights you could dim. Fluorescent, they're either on or off. That's your options. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about direct versus indirect lighting. So direct lighting is using a task lamp like the one here that's shown. You can position that lamp to put the light directly on whatever it is you're looking at. And for somebody who needs really good light, and that would be someone with diabetic retinopathy, someone with macular degeneration, who really needs to be able to get as crisp a view of whatever they're looking at as possible, that's super important. Indirect lighting is when you point that light away and you sort of have this, it's almost like the light is filtering in from the side or something. It's not pointed directly at it, but it's providing a little bit of light. And that's important because with glare, you have people with cataracts. We've all had this experience where you are driving in your car and your windshield's a little dirty and you come around the corner and the sun hits you in the face and suddenly you really can't see anything because the smudging on your windshield makes it hard to see. Well, if that's similar to cataract. So if you add bright light to something, those people really can't see very well. So you want to be able to provide an indirect light and allow them to still be able to see, but not have all those glare issues. So here are some pictures of the two libraries where I've worked and the lighting that we had. So the top left corner here, there's a little panorama of the Clifton Library in New York where I used to work. And you'll see across the ceiling there is the fluorescent lighting, and it worked pretty well. On the right-hand side, we had these gigantic windows where they put these sort of see-through blinds. They weren't very solid blinds and they didn't cut the sunlight all that much, but they did help. And the issue is those center stacks didn't get a lot of light. And you can in fact see on the stack on the left, it's actually quite dark towards the middle. So the lighting isn't great because it doesn't reach everywhere. The other three pictures are from the State Library. And the one underneath the Clifton Library shows our stacks. You can see up overhead, there's some fluorescent lighting. And the stacks there, the lighting is controlled by like a motion sensor. So I ran through before I took the picture, and in the back, there's still 3 more stacks, but the sensor didn't kick on for whatever reason. And so that would be really challenging for somebody who's trying to get back there and find some of our information if the lights don't kick on. So I included that one. And then on the right-hand side, we have 2 different workspaces. So the top one shows the ones that are not near the windows, and that's really great, again, for somebody with glare issues. And the one at the bottom is near the natural light. And one thing that could be done is to have a darker surface table, because you can see there's a little bit of reflection and glare coming onto that light colored table from the light outside. However, there are blinds on that window that could be closed if someone is sitting there and having an issue. So how else can we fight glare? First of all, there is a product called Acetate Sheets, and I really want to show you guys this. So what I think I'm going to do is open this link and then stop sharing my screen and reshare it, because I really want you to be able to see this. So, okay, can everybody see this page from Amazon?
Yes, we've got it.
Perfect. So these sheets cost $13 for a pack of 10 of them, something like that, 9 of them. And what these do, it's just a simple, it's the size of a sheet of paper, and you can provide these and folks can lay them over top of the newspaper. They can put them over a book, and it will help break up that bright white light shining down on what it is they're trying to read. Again, it will also improve contrast, which is super important. You can see on the side there, they come in yellow, green, orange, purple, and red. I don't recommend any of those colors because they're going to be very dark and make the print hard to read. But the yellow is proven to provide a lot of relief for people who have vision loss. So it's a really inexpensive way to boost up somebody's ability to read. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, the next thing you can do is to provide visors. So I'm also going to open this link for you. And I don't recommend any particular company that you get these from. It doesn't matter to me if you go to Amazon or somewhere else. I'm just showing these as a demonstration. So this one I think is from Oriental Trading Company. They have these cheap visors. You've probably seen them. You can get 12 of them for $26. And that helps people to shield their eyes from light that's coming from up above. And a lot of people really like these. They find that they're very helpful. They're not the most fashionable things probably, but you know, for an inexpensive thing, and you can give it to somebody and they have it once, or you can kind of recycle through them if you're comfortable with that. I think post-COVID, most of us are not reusing things, but just in case, that's also a possibility. Okay. Simply shutting the blinds, like I mentioned, the libraries where I've worked, we have blinds on the windows. Most of us who spend most of our days inside of buildings, we want those blinds open so we can at least see the sunlight, even if we're not out in it. But if there's a patron that has a glare issue, it's good to close those for them. Change your direct lighting to indirect lighting. So again, turn off that light that's shining directly on a piece of paper and let them use the fluorescent light. put a floor lamp behind them so the light filters down into what they're looking at without going directly upon it, that sort of thing. Provide dimmer switches if possible. This isn't always possible, but in meeting rooms and things like that, if you can install dimmers to allow someone to control the amount of light that they have, that might be helpful. Swapping out cold light for warm. You probably have noticed looking at people's headlights that those bright blue lights are really quite glaring when you're driving into them versus the yellow lights that are a little bit easier to see around. So most light bulbs now, when you are in the store, when you are searching for them, they'll even say cold light or warm light. So warm light provides less glare. And you can direct a patron to a less bright section of the library. Like I pointed out, in our library, we have the section away from the windows where people can work, or the section near the windows where people can work. Okay, so this section on technology, I wanted to just share real quick some technology tips with you. So maybe what would be best for me to do is kind of open all of these links first, and then I can go through them with you. And I think that might work best. So just give me 1 minute to go through here. Click on all of these. And I'm going to preface this by saying that I am a PC user. I'm not an Apple user. So I'm going to demonstrate some stuff for PCs. That doesn't mean that Apple stuff isn't accessible. In fact, Apple, I think, is generally considered more accessible than Windows. I just don't happen to have that knowledge with me. So I am going to now share a couple of websites with you all and see what happened here. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to share is these keyboard stickers. And let me just get it pulled up. So these keyboard stickers cost $9. You can purchase them from all over the place. You do not, again, have to get them from Amazon. And what they do is they stick directly onto the keyboards that you might already have your computers connected to. And you can get the yellow and black. You can also get black and white if you'd prefer. You can see all the combinations down at the bottom. So if you prefer to get black background with white letters, if you prefer to get white with black letters, that's totally up to you. And that really helps somebody who needs some bit of magnification and is struggling to see what the keys are. So I highly recommend these. Maybe you can't put them on every single keyboard that you have, but you could decide to have one workstation or two workstations that are accessible. And for $9, you really can't go wrong with that. So, okay, so that's that one. Now, if I switch over here, can you guys see when I switch tabs?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little demonstration here with mouse pads to show you what it looks like to have good contrast on your workstations. So this is something that you can do really easily. This, generally, we either have a dark workstation with a light or a light workstation, like the countertop. So if this is my dark workstation and I've put a black mouse pad on it and a black mouse on it, that's pretty difficult to see. So my dark workspace, and then I put a light pad on it and my white, that's going to, my dark mouse, that's going to be a lot easier for someone to come in and see. Similarly, if I have a white workspace and then I put on a light mouse pad And then I have this wild light mouse. That's difficult for people to see, to say nothing of all the patterns and craziness that's going on. So if I get rid of this and I put on a dark mouse pad on the white background, and then I put on a solid color white mouse, you can see it's much easier to see. So you can do those things, mouse pads, like I'm sharing here. A mouse pad, this is a 2-pack of mouse pads in a variety of colors for $9. So that really doesn't cost all that much. Wireless mice in a variety of colors cost like $10 at Walmart. So that's really not all that much either. So that's another quick and easy way to improve contrast for people. And let's see. Okay, I gotta get going through this. I know we're running short on time. Okay, so both Apple and Windows have a guide on their website for people who are blind and visually impaired. So hopefully you can see this. As you can see, I think Apple's probably done a better job. I mean, just looking at the way the page is set up, it's much easier to read the word vision than guide for people who are blind or low vision. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing real fast and do a quick demonstration of my desktop. So let me get out of all this. And I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to go through an extensive demonstration of Windows accessibility, but I will show you where to go for it. So, okay. Okay, so this is my screen. If I click the start button and I go to the settings, here on the settings, can everybody see the settings?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Is the ease of access menu. If you double click on that, there are a variety of options in here that you can set up on maybe one workstation that you have. And so you can do things like adjusting the text. You can see just sliding it, you can make it up to 225% bigger. You can make everything on the screen bigger. You can make everything brighter. So if you have someone who needs it really bright, or consequently, you have somebody who's got glare issues and they need it darker, you can do all of that. Then you can change the size of your mouse pointer. I find as I'm getting older, and my daughter laughs at me, but half the time I lose the mouse pointer. So you can make that bigger, you can make it smaller. You can change the color of your pointer, and that makes it easier. Similarly, you can do that with your text cursor. So when you're working in Word, something like that, typing an email, the size of that text cursor can improve, and you can change the color of that. It does have, there is this magnifier on. And so if I turn that on and I click on something, you can see how it makes it much bigger. And just by turning it off, it goes back to normal. So that's easy. And then you can set how big you want that magnifier to work. There are color filters. So if you want to accommodate someone that you know has color blindness, it's right in there, red, green, and blue, yellow color blindness. You can change everything to high contrast. So that's something that's really good. And then finally, you can use narrator. And narrator will read the screen out loud. So that's just a quick run through of all of that. Okay. So I'm just gonna real quick go back to my PowerPoint. We're really almost done, guys. Thanks for hanging in there. And some other ideas, you could do an audio described movie night. A lot of DVDs now have a video description, so One of my favorite movies is Wonder Woman, and if I were visually impaired, I would just hear a lot of things getting blown up. But if you put on the audio describe menu, it's in the same submenu as the captioning, then it will say Wonder Woman runs through no man's land and fights off the bullets from the Germans on the other side or whatever. It'll actually tell you what the action is. Definitely you want to provide print copies of PowerPoints and presentations in advance if possible. That way somebody who is sitting in an auditorium listening to something, if they can't see the screen up ahead, they have everything right there with them. And you can sign patrons up for the National Library Service, which is also open to people who have reading and physical disabilities, or for NFB Newsline. Just some general etiquette things. You want to speak to the blind person, not to their companion. Remember, they're not hearing impaired, so you don't need to yell or speak loudly to them. If they happen to come in with their service animal, those dogs are working, so they're not to be fed or pet or distracted in any way. And in fact, the dogs get in trouble when they get distracted. So, you know, you're causing that animal to be disciplined because you can't keep your hands off it. Make sure to give them specific directions based on either distance, or if you're like me and hopeless at that, you can use clock directions. So if someone comes in and says, where are the new books located? You don't want to say, oh, they're right over there. You want to say they're at 10 o'clock or they're 4 feet in front of you, something like that. It's totally fine to use words like see and look. Don't play guessing games with the person. Introduce yourself by your name and title until you know that that person knows who you are. And if you want to lead that person somewhere, don't grab them by the arm. Ask them if they need assistance and offer them your arm instead, and they will follow you. And finally, when in doubt, ask. It doesn't hurt, and they will appreciate that you took the time to learn about what they need. So this is a final wrap up here. As I say, I participated in a program called the Rural Libraries and Social Wellbeing Research Project. This is the website, and all of my pictures are on there. My videos are on there. There's lots of information, so please feel free to check that one out. Every single state has a state agency for the visually impaired. They're happy to talk to you. You can call them. Here's the website for the National Library Service. So if you want to sign a patron up for free audiobooks, you can go on that website and find your regional library. South Dakota, we're the only game in town, so you can call us and peer. There are consumer advocacy groups like the National Federation of the Blind. I've put their website there, and the American Council for the Blind. And those groups are made up primarily of visually impaired people. They're in the leadership positions, and they organize visually impaired people in their states. And they are more than happy to give you assistance. And then again, local civic organizations, especially the Lions Club, whose mission is to be Knights of the Blind, they can help you to provide some of those more expensive materials. So back to our quiz. All of them were false, clearly. I hope you learned that. If nothing else, all of these are false. If you were to follow every single suggestion I've made about lighting, contrast, glare, the keyboard stickers, lights, whatever, you could do all of this in your library for under $100 and really make a difference to people who are visually impaired. And with that, I'm going to finally shut up. Here's all my contact information. Please feel free to contact me at any time. My email and phone number are right there, kate.kosier@state.sd.us. My phone number is 605-773-5081. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. It looks like we had a question way back in the chat, so I'm going to grab that first.
Sure.
Let's see here. No, I lost it. Okay. We have a question. A patron that couldn't read picture or beginner readers since the font is so small. So someone was wondering, do you know any publishers who make larger font picture books?
There are some, none is coming to my head just now, but if that person wants to email me, I can get them a publisher name.
Okay, great. And
Yeah.
then we did have a question about the higher contrast setting. We used to hear that using higher contrast would wear out the monitor faster. Is that still true with LED monitors?
I don't think so. That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I know ghosting is kind of an issue. Sometimes if you're, you constantly have a particular image that's on there, but I haven't heard that high contrast settings will wear out your monitors.
Okay. The next question looks like we do have a computer with larger keys on the keyboard. Should we put some sort of reserve sign on it?
You probably are not going to have that many visually impaired people who need to come in and use that, but certainly if you knew that somebody was coming in, you could reserve it. You could also, if someone happened to be on it, just ask them to move to another computer and just explain that you have a patron that needs that particular keyboard. Or if they're really fussy about it, you can swap out the keyboards real fast too. It's not difficult to swap USB cables from one computer to the next.
Okay. It looks like we've had a request, if you do find a publisher with large print picture books available, that they would all like to receive that in the follow-up email. So I can get that to them if we find some. It looks like
For
people
sure.
are commenting, great information, very, very helpful, sharing some links in the chat. I don't see any more questions. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to type those in. I have shared the LEU request form, so make sure and grab that so you can fill that out and get your certificate.
All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming. I'm so pleased that it was helpful.
Yes, thank you as well. All right, we can stop the recording.